In this exercise, we're going to see how JavaScript can handle errors in a way that's a little more friendly than some of the sites you may have visited in the past. For those following along with the exercise files, this is Chapter 4, Example 8, Script HTML. And as usual, it's a pretty straightforward HTML page, nothing interesting happening here. So we go over to our script.js file, and there's not a whole lot interesting happening here either, yet. What we're going to do is a square root calculator, simply because it lets you see some of the things that JavaScript can do with math, but mostly you can see how it can handle the variety of different errors that can happen when you're trying to do something with math. So let's start off by creating a variable called answer, and it's going to be set based on a prompt, as we've done before. Prompt gets parentheses after it, a string in the middle of that says enter a number. Then a comma and another set of quotes, because remember that's the default for a prompt. If we wanted a default, we could put it there. So normally if you try to take the square root of something, if you put in a number, you're fine. But what if you put in a negative number? You can't take the square root of a negative number. Or if somebody puts in a string, or if somebody puts in nothing at all. These are all problems. Because of that, you want to capture those problems before they happen. You don't want to just put out an ugly coding error message, because it's unfriendly, and people who don't understand much about computers have no idea what's going on, and you'll just get, messages saying, my browser did nasty things and I hate your site. So you want to try and be friendly. So you want to start off, instead of just doing something, you want to say you want to try to do something. What goes in the try is inside braces, as you might expect. And you say if, and we want to check to see if not ends. If not answer, if nothing got entered. If nothing got entered at all, it won't have a value, and not ANS, answer, will be true. Two characters like that is an OR. So we're going to check to see if something is true or something else is true. If any one of these things is true, the if will return a true. So we want to check and see if this is a number. So there's a built-in JavaScript function, is NaN, is not a number. If is nan, then we also know there's a problem. Or there's another option here, if ans is less than 0. If any one of these things are true, we want to do an if statement. So we set up some braces, and inside there we say throw new error, and say not a valid number. Error is kind of like alert, except instead of saying alert, it's actually a problem. Throw actually tells the browser, you don't think you have a problem yet, but I'm telling you now, this is the equivalent of an error. So just say you have an error. If you throw something, well, something's going to need to catch it later, and we'll see that catch later on. But first, if we get down to here, everything's okay. So we want to say alert, the square root of, and concatenate the original value put in, the word is, and then concatenate on the end of that math.sqrt, which is square root. That's another built-in routine. There's a whole set of math routines built into JavaScript. So you take the square root, follow that with parentheses, and pass it ANS. And that will give you the square root of ANS, of answer. End the alert with another parentheses, and they have a semicolon there. That is the end of your try block. After your try, you have your catch. Because as we said, if you're going to throw something, you're going to need to catch it. Catch gets past something we're going to call error message. And what are we going to do with that error message? Well, let's put out another alert. instead. So you're going to get one type of alert or another type of alert. And our error message is the error message value that was passed in. That error message is an object that contains a message that we will put out here. And then we need to end our catch with another curly brace. So we take in the number there, and then we try. We just try to do this. If nothing was entered, or what was entered isn't a number, or something was entered and it's a number but it's less than 0, then we can't take the square root of it. So we throw a new error saying not a valid number. Otherwise, we take the square root of it and put it out. If we've thrown an error, well, then here we catch it. We take error message is what's passed in. We put out that error message so we know what happened, and that's the end of it. The nice thing about doing it this way is if this math.squareroot command fails, we will still fall into this catch because we're inside the try block. So any errors that happen between here and here will automatically fall into the following catch. So this is sort of an if. If there's an error in anything inside here, go to this section. So if there's an error that's thrown for some reason, say we weren't actually checking to see if the number was less than 0, and we put in a negative number, this would trigger a less meaningful error message, and we'd end up in the catch displaying that. So let's save this, and then let's see it work. Put our HTML file into our browser, and it says enter a number. 42, and the square root of 42 is 6.48 and a whole lot of digits. I'll take its word for it. On the other hand, if we reload the page and we try putting in negative 42, it'll say it's not a valid number. If we reload the page and say cancel, it'll say not a valid number. If we reload the page and say cat, that is also not a valid number. So this is a much friendlier error message than most of the usual JavaScript error messages. So this type of functionality allows you to be friendlier. Even though you're using JavaScript, which some people might think, oh, you're immediately going to throw nasty error messages if there's a problem, it's not required. You don't have to. Throw in some try and catch blocks, and your code and your websites will be much more friendly to users. Next up, putting this all together into your first application.